welcome back, witches. Time to talk about another episode of Agatha All Along, and man, this was the episode that topped them all for me. I think this is my favorite episode. Billy is here, but does that mean that this might be Hulkling? And where the heck is Tommy? Why do we always forget about Tommy? Poor Tommy, I feel like he's always getting shafted. This episode was all that I wanted and more, and I am so happy that we finally got some backstory. I predicted that this was going to be a flashback episode, and it was. All right, so before we get into it, just a friendly spoiler warning. Heads up, friends, we are going to be talking spoilers in this episode, and there is a lot that could be spoiled if you haven't watched, because we got some answers to some questions, which of course, as always, led to so many more questions. So what happened in this episode? Well, to summarize, we get the origin story of Billy here, who is introduced to us initially as William Kaplan. We find out about how he became Billy Maximoff and sort of became these two souls in one body, and he goes on a journey to try to uncover where he came from, who his family really is, and sort of what's going on with him, and why he also seems to have this sigil that we find out Lilia placed on him, what that's about, what that means, and all of this good stuff. Throughout his journey, he of course finds out that he is connected to the Maximoffs, that he is Wanda's son and Vision's son, and that Tommy, his brother, he doesn't know where Tommy ended up after everything went kaput in Westview. So that's kind of where we end up with this episode. We also then come back to the present day, and we have a little confrontation with Billy and Agatha, who it turns out did survive. I have some thoughts about that, but we'll get to that as we go through. This episode honestly was all I wanted and more. I think it's my favorite episode thus far. Finally, I have a new episode that beats out episode 1 for me, and I just really loved it. There's a lot of reasons why I loved it, but really I feel like the pacing of the show has just been quite good, especially in comparison to some of the other Marvel series that we've had of late and just Marvel projects. I feel like the pacing here is pretty great. It's also interesting how it mirrors kind of what's going on with the Penguin. So if you don't know, I've also been watching The Penguin, which is a DC Comics show connected to the Batman, and this past Sunday, when we got the new Penguin episode, it was also a flashback episode. So it's interesting. I kind of predicted that the next episodes we were going to get were going to have to give us more of the story, maybe be flashbacks, and that is exactly what we got here. It's also interesting that this pacing does kind of mirror a little bit WandaVision. I've been feeling like it's very similar. So if you like WandaVision and you haven't watched this show yet and you've just been watching my reviews or you're waiting, I think you will like this series because there is a very similar feeling that I'm getting the further we get into it. So with WandaVision, I believe it was episode 7 instead of episode 6, where the sort of what's really going on, the curtain kind of came down. That's when we broke the fourth wall. And in this series, it seems like this was our episode that did that. But we still have a lot of questions to answer, so don't worry. Still a lot of mysteries to uncover, and we have 3 episodes left, because it's also going to be 9 episodes, like WandaVision was. I love that this episode was so Billy focused, and it's really great because it really also lets Joe Locke sort of shine in the show. He's a very strong actor, so I'm really glad that we got to see that. One of my favorite scenes is the scene with Billy and Agatha, where Agatha is still trapped in the illusion and Billy's just seeing what's happening in front of him. And we know Agatha, because we saw in episode 1, she thinks she's at the police station and she's interrogating Billy, and what he sees is just a woman who doesn't seem to know what's what. This is when he, of course, frees her from the curse that was put on her that keeps her trapped in this life where she thinks that she really is a person living in Westview, when really she's not. She's an ancient witch. Getting to see Catherine Hahn recreate that scene and really play up this detective character was so much fun. I really loved it. So that was really cool. I also love in general what they're doing with Billy's origin here. It is similar to the comics, but different. And that is something that I really love when the MCU does stuff like this. I love when they just take inspiration from the comics, but get to play with that and do something different. And so in the comics, Billy is a reincarnated soul. He is William Kaplan, but he is also Billy Maximoff. So he is sort of the soul of Wanda's son reborn. But here we find out that it was kind of William Kaplan died, and at the same time, Billy Maximoff fled into William Kaplan's body and took over that body. And so Billy doesn't really remember the memories of being William. He really only has, well, he really doesn't remember a lot, I think, at first, but he starts to uncover more of his past, and then he starts to remember more and more about his family and wants to be connected to them. It was just really interesting because it's really crazy and traumatic when you start to see the story unravel in this way, and you get to see basically William's parents almost grieving the loss of their son because he has this amnesia, which of course Billy just pretends that he knows everything. It's just really intense, and I like how grounded it is, and I like how we're exploring kind of what that is like to be a soul in a different body and kind of not really know who you are. It's also a really interesting journey just of self-discovery in terms of this being a younger character and that being something obviously a lot of us go through when we are teenagers, where we're discovering ourselves and figuring out who it is we are and who we want to be. I also have a theory that I think Billy is not necessarily a part of Mephisto's soul, although I do still think we might get Mephisto in this show. I'm not sure, but I am still thinking Mephisto might be introduced here. If Mephisto exists in this world, we'll see. Been mentioned one time. I think Mephisto might show up, but I actually think Billy is a part of Wanda's soul, and that is how he was able to live outside of her illusions that she was creating, her warped reality that she created. And I feel that potentially as well, loss of pieces of her soul may have changed Wanda, which could have also contributed to what happened in Multiverse of Madness and make more sense, but we shall see. That's just a theory, and it's a theory that just makes everything, I think, make a little bit more sense for me. I think that would also be interesting. I think especially with Billy's powers, they could literally come directly from Wanda. And I also wonder if that means that Wanda might be at the end of the Witch's Road, or might be the person that we're going to run into. This was another theory I had going into this series, that it might reintroduce the Scarlet Witch into the MCU, but we will see. It would be really cool if that happened, and it'd be really cool if Elizabeth Olsen was in this, but I don't want to get too hype about it, because if it doesn't happen, then I'll be disappointed. I also thought about this because I was thinking back to WandaVision and what Vision says before he leaves, the vision that Wanda created from her memories. And he basically says it's okay, and that, like, he'll always be a part of her because he comes from within her. Gosh, every time I think about that scene, it just makes me really sad. Gosh, the ending of WandaVision is really sad. WandaVision is just grief incarnate. We also get an interesting moment with William Kaplan when he is at his bar mitzvah and he has a palm reading from Lilia. I also love how all the characters are just like popping up everywhere. And the whole idea that, you know, they were kind of all around, and so them coming to be a coven was fated. It's also interesting because what she says is the tower reversed, which does have ties to this idea of fate, of things kind of working out in the end. So the tower card in the tarot, when it's reversed, tends to mean a transformation. It can mean a fear of change, this idea of just dodging disaster and really having faith that things are going to be okay and that some divine intervention will come in. So that is interesting to me, and I wonder how that will play out in connection to William. I feel like a lot of the tarots that we've been getting in terms of what we've been seeing in the show that Lily has been blurting out have all kind of connected to the characters that she's saying them to at that time when she kind of breaks, sees this, and then says it. But it could also be a full tarot reading, so I'm curious to see when I go back. I kind of want to do a video where I just go back and, like I talked about doing an Easter eggs one before, kind of want to go back up to this point and just grab everything that I can and just do like maybe a theories and an Easter eggs video. I'll see if I have time to do that, but stay tuned. If I have time to do that, I'd love to do it before we get into some of the final episodes where I think things are really going to pick up now and it's going to be full steam ahead. I'm also wondering, Agatha survives and she comes out of the earth pit, whatever you want to call that. The thing that I said reminded me of the Krakoan pit where mutants are sent back in the Krakoan era. She survives that. But where are Jen and Lilia? Do they just die? That's kind of what's implied at the end of this episode when we come back to the present. But I'm not sure that that's actually what's happening, because it seems a little anticlimactic if that is the case. I feel like they really should have gotten more of a, I mean, I guess they kind of got an on-screen death, but I feel like it should have been a little bit more. And so I'm wondering if Lilia and Jen might be a couple characters that will survive this ordeal. Maybe we'll see them at the end of the show, or maybe they're going to appear later in the other episodes and we'll find out that they survived. I'm not entirely sure, but I also feel like getting rid of Jennifer Hale in the show would be really tragic, and also losing Patti LuPone when she's such an amazing actress and she's so good as Lilia would also be disappointing to me. However, I don't know if these characters are important enough in the Marvel mythos for them to have the staying power beyond a series, and I'm also not sure if the actresses have even signed on to do more, so I'm not sure. I kind of hope that they survive, though, or at least if, you know, they are going to perish in the show, I hope that they survive this and they actually get like a full proper send-off, because that is something that I'm not as big of a fan of. I do really like the characters, so I'd like to see them continue. I'm sad that witches are just dropping left, right, and center here. People have also been putting Lilia's phrases that she's been blurting out into orders to try to make something of them, and they do seem to in some places connect. Like, one of the examples is in episode 4. She says, you know, we really kind of hated each other in the beginning, but now, and then in episode 3, she says, I love you guys. And so those seem to be connected, and it seems to be working backwards. So it seems to be one of that full thought until maybe the end of the episode, but she's also been blurting out the tarot. So I don't know if those are connected or they're separate things. Basically, I want to go through and gather all of these and see if I can try to make sense of what they all mean. I think it's going to come to a head in the final episode. And so that's also why I don't think Lilia is really dead, because I think we still have to get more from her. I don't think we've gotten all of her sort of visions that she has. And I think the last episode is where we're going to see what that all really means and where that plays out. So if we string them together now, we might be able to figure out what that direction is and have even more pinpointed theories. Also, if Agatha did survive and Lilia and Jen didn't, why is that? That's not really explained, and I don't really love that. I get that Agatha's really powerful, but I still feel like I need an explanation. Also, where is Rio? I was hoping Rio would return in this episode. I still haven't seen her. Rio, where you at? What you doing? Rio is up to something, and I feel like next episode we're gonna find out what that is. So I'm very curious to see where Tommy is. I think Tommy will be ultimately at the end of the road. I don't know if Tommy, or at least Billy, will be able to find out where Tommy is at the end of the road. I think maybe Tommy didn't have anywhere to go, and so I wonder if he just came to the Witch's Road, or he's lost in some kind of purgatory or something like that. Or if perhaps Tommy is in Mephisto's realm. I mean, I don't know. I definitely feel like Agatha may have made a deal with Mephisto and given up her son for power, if that's what's really happened, because I feel like the whole thing with Nicholas Scratch is also going to be revealed, and I feel like that's also maybe not what it seems. Also, is his boyfriend Hulkling? I need to know. But I feel like he could be, because I feel like when Billy is telling him, you know, I'm not really William, I'm someone else, and I kind of died and then I came back and it was different and I don't remember anything and I think I'm a different person. He takes that all pretty well, which makes me think he might have a secret of his own, and maybe his secret is that he is, you know, a Skrull-Kree hybrid child and he has powers too. We'll see. But I think that might be where we're going, and if it is, I'm very excited because I love Billy and Hulkling. So please, please MCU, give us Billy and Hulkling. I would love that. Okay, this is just a little addendum because I just went back to watch and I realized that the boyfriend, his name in the closed captions is Eddie. Eddie like Teddy? Like Hulkling? It could be true. It could be true. There's evidence. There's evidence. You saw it. There's evidence. That's all I have for this one, friends. I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I think overall, I would give this episode a 5 out of 5, honestly. I really loved it. I mean, there's a few things that I have questions about, but I am hoping that the next episode will resolve those. And they're not major things. They're just, you know, I like to have reasons for everything. That's who I am. I'll see you next time. But until then, friends, as always, stay nerdy.